Hey neighbors, it's Jun and Yukai, co-founders of Metablox. So we're really excited because today we just announced the tokenomics, or was it this week? This week we announced the tokenomics, and we thought that it would be really important for Yukai, who designed that tokenomics and that economy, to talk a little bit about it in more detail. So the first place that I want to start is, why is Yukai even fit to design economies? So Yukai, could you just give us a little bit of background about your experience with economies, with gamification, and all those factors that are required to make this type of game mechanic?
Yeah, I think the first thing is I've been studying and designing virtual economies since 2003. June, you and I both are majored in economics from UCLA, right? But that hardly matters. I mean, it helps us understand a lot of things better. But as you know, we don't use that knowledge as much. But my main background is in 2003. I became a pioneer in the field of gamification. So since then, I wrote a book about it that's been read by, I think, as at least I know there's a handful of billionaires who are fans of my book, and some leaders of countries. And I've taught this at Stanford University, Oxford, Yale. I helped IDEO. I've helped Tesla, Google, all these places, right? And the Boston Consulting Group. And in 2006, June and I actually together, we started a virtual world company called FD World. So started working in the virtual world space. I was also the head or chief experience officer with Anthony D'Iorio, who is a co-founder of Ethereum. So working on blockchain wallets. So that was my entry into cryptocurrency and blockchain. And then I was also head of creative labs and digital commerce for HTC and Vive. So thinking about how the VR impacts the future. So I think all these things come together to form what we call the future metaverse, right? Even though the metaverse, people are still very vague about what it is. They kind of have ideas, something related to VR, blockchain, NFT, crypto, gamification, all these things coming together. So I do feel, and I'm just completely lucky because of that. It's like all the things I've done in the past led to this moment of creating virtual economies, understanding how the metaverse world, creating the architecture of what a metaverse economy would be like.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for breaking that down for us. And it does seem like a great convergence on all these different skill sets now, hopefully coming to fruition with Metablox. And let's dive just deep into the tokenomics here that you're designing. And as context with Metablox, we have the Blox, which is the NFT, that virtual piece of property that you will be able to own as the NFT. And in addition to that, we have the tokenomics behind that, the Metablox Coin. So today we're going to be talking about the details of that Metablox Coin and how it's designed.
Yep.
So Yukai, go ahead and please tell us all these lines and graphs and charts here that you have. It looks overwhelming. Maybe you can give us a little breakdown of what you designed here.
Yeah, so this is what we call a game loop, and I don't think we'll be able to talk about all these details in this video, but hopefully as time goes on, as we keep making more of these and people watch it, they'll soon feel out all these little mechanisms. But like you mentioned, a game loop at the beginning always looks intimidating. When we first launch, it's going to be our MVP, right? Something relatively simple, and we add over time. So I've actually devised 16 different phases where it gets more and more complicated, and things get added to it. So
nice. So that first one was the final phase.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Okay. Yeah.
I mean, it could change based on community voting because there's the governance token, and and so we are governance token can be voted for what to change and whatnot. So, but generally speaking, this is how the structure will go. In the long run, it might take 1-2 years to complete this full vision. But so I think based on where we need to be, I can just explain the fundamentals first, and then this is the fundamental, I guess. This will be phase 5. So basically what we see here is that, like June said, we have a Blox, right? A Blox is a physical location in the real world, and the whole point of Metablox is merging these physical places with memories, real life memories, so that it can become more meaningful. And these physical blocks generates MetaRent. So MetaRent is not on the blockchain. It's just like an in-game currency where all of these blocks will just every day produce some of this MetaRent. And how much MetaRent it produces will depend on the tier of that blocks, and a tier is determined by how close they are to landmarks. Landmarks is going to be a big thing in the Metablox world. Also because it embodies our value, right? It's a physical place that has a lot of recognition and meaning and memories behind it. So Blox generates MetaRent based on its levels and its tier and some boosters, which we'll discuss later. But then a Blox is just a Blox. If we want to level it up, we have to infuse memories to them. And I think memories are important in terms of, these unique things happen. And we want to make sure people don't just upload random memories. It should be memories that actually have good stories behind them that could touch people's hearts. So that's why we have a mechanism where people, wallet holders on Metablox, they can go and do memory marks on these memories. So they can...
As you're talking, I'm going to cut in and... just give some comments where I think there's some important areas because there's so much information. I'm just going to summarize a few things. So the Blox itself is what people own, and the Blox will generate MetaRent, right? This is independent of anything. So even if you have never had a memory in our first city, which is San Francisco, you could still, in essence, own one of our about 5,000 first blocks in San Francisco and generate MetaRent, even if you don't have memories yet. Yes. And you can later use this MetaRent, which is different from the Metablox Coin. We'll get to that. The MetaRent you can use for different things. For something as simple as naming your blocks, for example, super simple, to something as most valuable, which is the landmark. And you use the MetaRent to bid to buy a landmark. And you'll get to that. It's just want to make sure people understand. You buy the blocks, you get the MetaRent. And now, so the question is, you talked about the memories. NFTs are meaningful. Let's take a look at the artwork NFTs. They're meaningful either because people really like the art or they like the artist behind it, or there's some kind of meaning behind that NFT, that art. For us, when you're buying a location in San Francisco as part of the virtual world, that virtual blocks, what is the meaning behind it? And that's where we get to the memories. It's not the virtual artwork, it's not the author, it's the memories that people have experienced in that location are what bring meaning to that NFT. And then the question is, well, can't people just upload any picture, right? Who's to say what is a meaningful memory? Why can't I just take a random picture of, I don't know, my back scratcher, which is here, right? Like, why not just take a picture and add it, and then maybe it'll level up? Well, then now we get to the memory mark, which is what Yukai was talking about, which is other neighbors are going to give memory marks for things that they find meaningful. And there's 4 types. So that's where I cut you off. Yukai, please continue.
Yep. So there are different memory marks, which are, for instance, inspiring. This is such an inspiring memory, or heartwarming, or solemn. If something historically terrible happened at this place and we want to remember it, so solemn. And so those are things that people can label, basically tag to these memories to elevate its status and help that blocks level up. And I really think the memory part is what is unique and differentiates our project, because there are some projects out there that, they take physical real estate and then they say, let's just build a game on it. So, and the physical real estate is the only real thing and as an anchor. But for them, all these other projects out there, they have to create meaning, right? They have to do a lot of storytelling. They have to fabricate fantasy to make people care about it. But in the real world, there's already a ton of memories that people care about. The place that Jun and I lived when we were doing our early startups, right? That's always a story I tell. It's a fond memory. Or the basketball court that Michael Jordan practiced basketball on, or Hewlett and Packard's first garage, Steve Jobs' garage. Those all have memories that go, decades back, since even centuries back. And we don't have to create them. They're all there, and they're in people's hearts and minds. And that's why I think having that memory, adding value, and especially lasting value to these physical properties is what this project needs to be. And this is why it stands out and is something that we believe it will be so impactful in the future that, Jun and I, we're committing our lives to, and also our team, about 10 people, we're committing our lives to making this vision come true, because it's not only interesting, it's not only fun, but it's meaningful. And just like historical sites or museums, and it actually survives through the times, the ups and downs of the economy and whatnot. So we have memory marks, and memory marks help a Blox level up, okay? And like June said, what you can do when you're with your MetaRent, you can auction for landmarks and get these landmarks. So the thing about our tokenomics is that as a Blox levels up, it generates something called Metablox Coin. Now, here we have a old term we used to want to call a memory coin because it signifies memory. Yeah. This is still updating like very quickly. We're constantly changing as we go, but I think this is pretty set as a vision. So we changed to Metablox Coin because we saw that there's some other projects out there that want to call their project memory coin. So we thought that's fine. We just changed it to Metablox Coin. So as you level up, you generate Metablox Coin. And the thing is that a Blox can only level up so many times, which means that how many Metablox coins that can be generated by a Blox is capped. So each Blox, you can level up to level 5, and then you're capped, unless you pass it on to someone else, either sell it or give it to someone else. We call it generational ownership. So now, once you give it to someone else, that person can take it to level 6 to level 10, and they can pass on to generation 3 and levels 11 to 15, and then it's all capped at level 26. So generation 5, after you get to level 5, then you pass to another person, and it becomes generation 6, and that's what we call a perfect Blox. A perfect Blox is a Blox that has all these memories in them, has a bunch of memory marks. A lot of people already say, yeah, these memories are amazing. We really care about them. It generates the most amount of MetaRent, and it also provides the most amount of what we call it NFT shelf space that's coming later. And we can display our NFTs there when people browse, look through things. And then it'll also allow you to have more memories. And it'll generate a lot, like I said, a lot of MetaRent. So,
And I have a quick comment about that.
Yeah.
So Yuka, you mentioned there's a maximum of 5 levels that an owner can progress.
Yep.
And then it's capped. And then it has to go through a different generation. And I think it's important to highlight why. Why does it require a different generation to continue leveling up? And if that's the case, if it takes so long to get to a perfect Blox, it seems like it's going to take a really, really long time to even get there. So perhaps you can talk about that aspect of it and why you designed it to take a large investment of effort and time to create that lasting value.
Yeah. So there's a few components that come into this. I think from a highest level, we want to keep reminding people that Metablox is meant to be something we pass down to our children and even our grandchildren. Mm-hmm. And this is not here's a 2-year project where people at the beginning just make a lot of money and then everyone dumps and everyone leaves and it's just that. And whoever comes in later is screwed. This is not what we're here to do. I do believe, like any project, if you're in very early and it keeps growing, like they'll have huge returns, right? I think that's for any kind of startup project. But the question is this a 2-year vision or is it a 20-year vision? And here we're trying to, because we're based on the foundation of memory and meaning, I think it has to be long term. It can't be like, after a year, everyone has maxed out properties and they're generating all this MetaRent and it just doesn't matter as much anymore. I think a perfect Blox needs to have a lot of meaning, needs to represent something. And right now, if you have a perfect Blox, it means that this Blox has passed through many owners, many generations who uploaded their unique memories to this location. And all of them are not random memories. All of them are ones that people really said, hey, touched their hearts. It inspired them. And so when someone actually says, hey, I own a perfect Blox, it's truly meaningful. It's impressive. It's not like, oh, you played the game for 6 months. Like, no, this perfect Blox went through many hands and actually holds valuable things in human history. I think that's very important. And the other thing is we also want to ensure that people who hold these NFTs, these Blox, they can pass it on to someone else relatively easily, right? Because liquidity is very important for tokenomics and generally like NFT projects. Like if something's super valuable but you just can't sell it, then you're kind of stuck with that wealth until you find some people get stuck with their real estate actually for a little while before they can sell it. So we also want to make sure that if someone's buying an NFT from you, to them it's actually always more valuable than you, like all else being equal, right? Maybe if it's the most important memory for you, then you don't really want to let it go. But when you have this, the highest you go is level 10, let's say. But if they buy it from you, they can get it to level 15 and generate more MetaRent. So there's actual incentives for people to want to buy it off your hands, as opposed to, let's say, just another unminted property if there's still leftovers, whatnot. So we want to make sure that transactions are encouraged. It's not just a, hey, just buy it and forget it. And there's many mechanisms that discourages buying and forgetting. So if you buy it, you still have to come back at least once a month to like collect your MetaRent and do these things. And we also have a lot of mechanisms to make sure that, if you're just a whale, but then you spend a lot of money and then you don't do anything after that, you're not necessarily the biggest winners in the game. The biggest winners are people who put in dedication and curate the memories and do all those stuff to create more value for each blocks.
Yeah, I'm going to add to that just a really quick thing. When you talk about the whales versus the people who have spent the most time, the most energy to really hold and curate their memories. So what are going to be the most valuable blocks on Metablox? It's going to be the rarest. So it's either the tier 5 blocks, fine, but then of course it's going to be the landmarks. In San Francisco, our first city is going to be the Golden Gate Bridge, Golden Gate Park, Alcatraz, all of these places that are landmarks and rare. And what we want to make sure is that we're not positioning it in a way that the rarest items are going to be owned by just people that have a ton of money that just come in and swoop it. We want to make sure that doesn't happen. And the way we do that is while you can buy blocks with Ether or with Matic, and we'll talk about those details in probably a later video, but you can actually buy the blocks with cryptocurrencies. You won't be able to buy the landmarks. The only way to get a landmark, at least initially when it's minted, is to use and bid with MetaRent. So therefore, what is the best way to get MetaRent? Well, you have to have valuable blocks. You have to have leveled them up. You have to own blocks. So that's the way we want to make sure that it's our community, it's the neighbors who are truly invested that have the most valuable blocks, the most valuable property, and not somebody that just learned about Metablox, they have an investment firm, and they just start buying all this virtual real estate. They wouldn't be able to necessarily just swoop in.
Yeah, and of course, once you won a landmark with MetaRent, if you want to sell it to someone else with Ethereum or Matic, that's possible, and that usually most likely will be a straw liquidation event.
Yes, absolutely. Cool, man. Very well said. Let's continue. What's next here?
All right. So if you catch my logic, remember we said when a property levels up, it generates a certain amount of Metablox coins, right? So when we talked about when you reach level 26, it's a perfect blocks and it no longer levels up. And maybe later on through governance voting, it could be expanded. That's far into the future. But right now, 26 is the cap. And if you pay attention, you'll realize, hey, wait a second. When you reach a perfect blocks, it can't level up, which means it no longer generates Metablox coins, right? And so is that an issue? So we're going to talk about later that how if you own 5 perfect blocks of the same tier in the same city, it actually forms together to become what we call a mecha blocks, which becomes like a landmark, and which I think at this point it's good to explain what a landmark does. So you use MetaRent to bid for a landmark, right? And once you get a landmark, the key thing to note is that landmarks do not generate MetaRent. And it actually has, you can see here, a weekly upkeep cost of MetaRent. So it's actually going to burn your MetaRent in your wallet. Now, what it does do is that it actually generates Metablox coins on a weekly basis. So remember we said the amount of blocks is, or at least how much Metablox coins that can generate from a block is capped, right? There's 26 levels, so if you level up to 26, it generates those Metablox coins and it's done. So because blocks are limited, it's based on the city of San Francisco. Generally, within a city, how many Metablox coins that can be mined out are just limited. However, with the landmark, it's a little bit different, where your landmark, each week, it does burn your MetaRent, but it actually produces a bit of Metablox coins. So that's that and the mecha blocks together. They're the only mechanism in the economy that can continuously generate this Metablox coin. So it's almost like you have a Bitcoin mining machine, where you just own that machine and it just constantly mines Bitcoin for you. So this constantly mines Metablox coins for you. Of course, it's a relatively slow pace. It doesn't untip the economy. We have big spreadsheets to figure all that out. Like in 50 years, this landmark's not going to make a big dent in the big economy. Okay.
Yeah.
But it's there. So you can think about it as landmark is an engine to convert MetaRent into Metablox coins. And then also when you have, again, 5 perfect blocks, you can combine them into a Metablox. And then it's the same thing. A Metablox will have weekly upkeep cost, and but it will generate Metablox coins. If that wallet, somehow someone just suddenly gets, they usually will have a lot of MetaRent, right? Because they have blocks to power all of this. But if they suddenly sell all their blocks and they only have the landmark and they no longer have MetaRent, what happens is that it just stops producing your Metablox coins. So in order to continuously make it generating, people need to also make sure they still have a healthy supply of blocks that generate the MetaRent so they can afford the upkeep, or else they might want to consider passing to someone else who have a lot of blocks that generates MetaRent.
Yeah, so let me summarize that. MetaRent is an in-game only currency. There is no cap on the amount of MetaRent that can be generated. So, the further and further you have blocks, the more and more MetaRent you're going to have, and there are burning mechanisms or uses for it. But ultimately, there's no cap on the MetaRent. This is in-game only. MetaRent does not live on the blockchain. Okay, then we get to the Metablox Coin, which is an ERC-20 token. This once you own it, you will eventually be able to take it on an exchange and exchange it for fiat or another cryptocurrency. So it just depends on what you want to do with it. So that one will be capped. And the way we cap it, as Yukai mentioned, is a Blox can generate only so many, right? Total of 26 levels, about 5,000 blocks in San Francisco. And then we just have to do the math to see what the cap is. So that's how there is a limited supply of Metablox Coin generated from the initial city. And then there are these rare blocks that will generate Metablox Coin forever, right? And that's the landmark. And if you're able to get 5 perfect blocks to get the Mecha blocks. And then the last component of that, which Yukai summarized, was all the landmarks and the Mecha blocks cost MetaRent to maintain. And if you don't have enough MetaRent, then it'll stop producing, stop mining the Metablox coin.
Yep.
Cool. That was the summary.
And and MetaRent can be used for other things, like for instance, if we're exploring new regions, so we're opening up new cities. I think people who have MetaRent, they can spend their MetaRent to have early access. Like I want to be the first to pick out my favorite locations in Chicago. So there's some utility there. But we haven't really talked about the utility of the Metablox coin yet, and I think that's very important for this video. So so the Metablox coin, right? We already know that it generates pretty slowly. You need a lot of memory marks to level up. You have to really slowly mine out the Metablox coin. Landmarks, it's hard to get them. Only a few people have them. And they also mine these Metablox coins relatively slowly. So when you have these Metablox coins, it does two things. We call it a governance and dividend token. So governance, I think a lot of people are familiar. It is almost like having ownership in the company in the sense that it allows you to vote for decisions about what the Metablox project is doing. Like anything that we explained here, right? Generation levels, or should it be more generations? Should it be higher levels? Should the MetaRent economy change? People with the governance token, the Metablox coins, they can vote and they can alter what is the future of the platform if people want more memory marks. So I think that's something that a lot of people enjoy. So that that Metablox coin gives you power, right? Authority and power, just like a board seat gives people power. Of course, it's more distributed among all the Metablox coin owners, which is the whole theme of decentralization. But then it has what it called a dividend component. What is a dividend token? It means that it gives you dividends. So if people get a Blox and let's say they go and take it and they sell it on OpenSea, right? That's fine. They can do that. OpenSea charges 2.5% commission for that. And it's totally fine. People can do that. If they sell their Metablox on, or their blocks on our Metablox platform, so it's like, hey, this is off for sale, and people click it, they transact, will charge a 2.4% commission, so a tiny bit lower than OpenSea. However, 0.5% of that commission will actually be distributed among Metablox holders, or Metablox coin holders, depending on how much Metablox coins they have compared to the overall population. So as you have more Metablox coin, you're just going to constantly generate more and more liquid assets in your wallet. As long as the Metablox platform keeps getting more and more popular, there's a lot of commercial activity, people trading. I think at the beginning, it's going to be a relatively small amount as we're just ramping things up. But this is one asset, right? One token that can just indefinitely in your whole lifetime just constantly generate more wealth for the holder, as long as, again, the platform and the project itself is being successful and growing.
Yep. No, absolutely. I think that's very well put. And also think of it this way: if you are one of the neighbors that own a landmark or own a Metablox, it's going to be incredibly valuable because you're pretty much one of the only holders that have something that can continue to produce or mine the Metablox coin. And that gives you power, right? That gives you the dividend, and that gives you the governance power as well.
Yep. So you can see it as very similar to being a shareholder of a company, where and also a dividend giving shareholder, because many growth companies don't give dividends, right? They just want the stock to go up. And of course, I think Metablox Coin, because of all these components, I think if the project goes well, the value of it just in general, even the random speculation value, I think it will go up by a lot if this project gains a lot of popularity. But beyond that, it's a growth share, in a sense, growth equity almost, that gives dividends at the same time and gives you a tiny board seat that can help you make decisions. So I think it's something that will be something that is very, very valuable. And again, and the whole premise is that it's powering this memory economy, right? So we're really creating more meaningful experiences as we go, and as June said, the vision is preserve humanity's most important memory. So it's not just growing. We're not just here to grow the value of the coin or just play this fun Monopoly museum game. It's really to preserve humanity's most precious memories.
Yep, I think that's very well said. Thanks, Yukai. So I think that's great. Thank you for presenting the tokenomics. Super excited about it. If anybody has any questions, please join our Discord. We'll link out to it in the YouTube description. That's where you can find us. And I want to end with this. If you look at many of the other virtual worlds, if you look at many of the other games that are being developed, a lot of them is about spending more and more time within the game in order to grind, level up, maybe have different attire, different looks on your avatar, maybe design your own home, and spend more and more time in this virtual world. And we believe this is going to happen, and we believe a lot of people are going to spend their time and energy in the virtual setting, which is great. We have no problems with that. I think there's going to be a lot of value created there. At the same time, we wanted to approach it from a different angle, where we wanted to encourage people to have better and more meaningful experiences in the real world, and those experiences affect their level and their status and potentially their investments in the virtual world as well. And that's what Metablox is your blocks, your investments in your properties become more valuable as you have better experiences in the real world. And that's really where we want to end it. And that's, I think, the pinnacle of what we want to accomplish is we don't want to ever forget that we should go out there in the real world with our friends, with our family, travel, experience different cultures, and then put it online or put it on the blockchain so that it's preserved forever and other people can learn from it and grow from it and experience it.
Yep. And June and I, we've been working together for a while, like 16 years now. And we're just really excited to continue on and grow this project and make a difference in this world.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for listening to this video. We'll try to make some more videos as well to dive into different aspects of the economy and why we're doing this.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, neighbors.
If you like this one video, let us know. And so that will encourage us to spend time because there's so many things to do right now, so many execution things that we have to do.
Yeah.
But if you like this, let us know. We'll dedicate more time to making these videos, explaining more things, and connecting with the community more.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Yukai.
Thank
See you,
you.
everyone.
Take care. Bye.